Okay, a little departure today. The reading for the sermon is taken from a book entitled After the Ecstasy, The Laundry by Jack Kornfield. And this was recently recommended to me by the teacher I'm working with. The first part of the reading is a quote from an Indian guru mystic named Sant Keshavadas. And he was responsible for opening many centers and teaching meditation and was an advocate for world peace throughout his life. He says, "Go ahead, light your candles and burn your incense and ring your bells and call out to God. But watch out, because God will come, and He will put you on His anvil and fire up His forge and beat you until He turns brass into pure gold." From this chapter it says, "In spiritual practice, initiation is no simple ceremony. It is the passage through a difficult task by which our heart is matured. In understanding the trials and the hardships of a period of initiation, we can transform our view of ourselves and the world. We can awaken our spiritual authority and inner knowing, a trust that can carry us in the face of difficulties and death. Initiation forces upon us a shift of identity, in which we can transcend our small sense of self, release what is called the body of fear, and awaken an undying wisdom, love, and fearlessness. Initiation's transforming process is not always outwardly obvious. Some experience is as slow as a spiral, steady, repetitive remaking of your inner being. The heart gradually deepens in knowing, compassion, and trust through the 100,000 repeated practices and heartfelt sincerity of a regular spiritual discipline. The Buddha likened this process to the ocean floor, which descends little by little to the depths of the sea. The teacher, Dainan Katagiri Roshi, was once asked by his Zen students about the beautiful faith and warmth that he radiated. He said, they said, "This is what we want to learn from you. How do we learn that?" The master answered, "When people see me today, they don't see the years I spent just being with my teacher." He described how he practiced year after year, living simply, hearing the same teachings over and over again, sitting every morning no matter what, doing the rituals of the temple. This is the slow way of initiation, putting yourself over and over into the condition of attention and respect, baking yourself in the oven repeatedly until your whole being is cooked, matured, and transformed. So as you've heard many times, what we offer here is the path of initiation. And it's really interesting in that chapter there, it talks about how we really crave initiations. Not everybody craves spiritual initiations. And that has a lot to do with what society promotes as valuable and as important. You have people who believe that if they do things against society, because society does have a lot of problems, and the governments are very constrictive and run by corrupt individuals in a lot of cases. So there is some idea that to be a strong individual, you break the rules of society. And so you have gangs and you have people who get into doing criminal activity, and the initiation is to do your first whatever it may be. Maybe you got to hold up some kind of a store, or you, in some of these gangs, the initiation is killing somebody. That's an indication that you can now be in the gang. Somewhere underneath all that confusion is a natural impetus of the soul to be accepted into a group in which you feel growth is possible. If you're really, really angry and you've been mistreated, and you look around and you go, life is not fair, then you may get the idea that I would like to be initiated into a group that is overturning that. That's really dangerous, though, because ultimately society and its military and its armed forces and whatever you want to call it will get you, and they will put you in jail, and it's not pleasant. For those who come here, we have the desire to be initiated into greater connection with God. And I never quite heard it described as that reading did. I think it's utterly true. I mean, in the one quote he talks about the 100,000 repetitions, the same practices, in order that it would just become ground into your being. And the other one, the teacher is sitting there and the students go, we want what you have. And they say, what you can't see is the hours, the years that I sat with my teachers and heard the same teachings over and over again. So I want to give you some perspective on initiations. And the quote at the beginning is so beautiful and so intense. It's like, you want God? Okay, great, ask for it. But when God comes, be prepared for that pressure. That is the way. If you go to churches, they may make it sound like there's people in there that have this amazing relationship with God and they're so happy and they're just ecstatic. And I just haven't experienced it that way. And the book is entitled After the Ecstasy, the Laundry, meaning you're going to have moments of ecstatic union and a sense of clarity and a sense of just acceptance of yourself. And then you got to go out, you got to get in line and buy groceries, and you got to drive through these streets, and you got to deal with the winter, and you got to deal with your relationships that may or may not be at the same level of where you're at. You may find yourself at times tempted to want to regress into certain practices that you know are not good for you, but they temporarily help you just get through the next few hours. That's the laundry that he's talking about. And the book is all about quotes by masters, master teachers in Christianity, in Buddhism, in the Kabbalic tradition, in Sufism, the real deal, talking about these challenges that they face. Yes, having been initiated into mastery and then integrating as master teachers into society. There's a great passage where they're sitting with the Dalai Lama, and he's asking some of the Western teachers, what is the most challenging aspect that your students face or that you face? And they say the mindset of self-hatred. And the Dalai Lama's like, what? That's actually, he couldn't even believe it. So there's something about the culture here, this developed technological culture where there's a lot of money and there's a lot of modern conveniences. And we have a lot of messages from the media that are conveying to you how you're supposed to be. And we can't help but wonder if maybe they're right at times. Maybe we don't look good enough. Maybe we don't look young enough. Maybe we don't have enough money. Maybe our spouse is not hot enough. Maybe we're supposed to be different. And that cultivates an energy of hatred upon oneself, as though there must be something wrong with me. These other people seem to have this so easily. This path of initiation will show you every aspect that you do not have. And hence the pressure of that anvil or the hammer upon you being beaten by God as a way to try to you get to the end of the toothpaste and you have to squeeze out the last bit if you really want to make use of it. Think about that as God trying to squeeze those elements out of us that are just not good for us, but we don't want to let them go because we feel we'll be alienated from society. Yes, when you are initiated into another level of consciousness, there's no way around the fact that you're kind of in a different group now. Those of you who are familiar with sororities and fraternities, there's something about the people who are in them and there's something about the people who are not in them. And that is a real thing. In Canada, we didn't have a lot of that, so I don't have a ton of experience with it. In these kind of initiations, you get initiated into a higher consciousness. And that is not meant to be exclusive. However, everybody has to earn their way in. So as Sean was saying, most people go through the retrospection and things start to break down. And they can't explain why they're weepy and angry and all sorts of emotions come up. And that's the beginning of the hammer that's coming down upon us because we have said, I want to be closer to God. And God says, well, we first have to get rid of these things, this first level of fear and anger and hatred and remorse and all that stuff that's in the way. So that's a beautiful thing, actually, because you're going through something. In the gangs, they jump you in. That sounds very scary to me. They beat you and see how you handle it. And I guess if you can be beaten and still want to be part of it, then that's a good sign. We kind of do the same thing here, but it doesn't hurt in the same way. And we're trying to allow you to let go of these things. And it can seem a little violent at times. And you may wonder, how is that happening? I mean, I generally just sit there, I don't say that much. But there's a force that's been activated because you said, yes, I want to do this. In this particular path, we have the initiation of baptism. So that begins the process where you review your life, and then you kneel up here and say that you accept the light of Christ. And the light of Christ comes then. And that begins the process of you being able to see yourself. I wish it was like, oh my God, I'm so beautiful, but that isn't usually what first happens. It's kind of like, oh Lord, what have I been doing the last 20, 30, 40 years? Then if you continue to work, you're offered the initiation of illumination. Greater light. You may say that you all of a sudden become enlightened. So you're able to see things and know things. Does that mean that you are exactly what you see as your potential? No. To a certain degree, you begin to accept yourself more. At the same time, you see all this lingering behavior and attitude that is not congruent with that higher person. You may catch glimpses of you living that higher person for a few hours, for a few days, and then the laundry. And if you continue along the way, and he's talking about hundreds of thousands of repetitions. I mean, that might be an exaggeration because, if you think of how many days there are in a year, if you wanted 100,000 repetitions of meditation, that's like years. So I can assure you it's not going to take that long. But it's the energy of what he's saying. It's like there will be times where you're sitting there going like, here I am again, it's dry as can be, and meaning my meditation is not yielding me anything particularly new. I'm looking at the exact same issues that I've been looking. I'm looking at the exact same resistance. You know what would be good right now? A cheeseburger or something. Just give me some relief. Give me some excitement. I can think about going outside. Hey, it's warm. I'll walk to the place. I'll get my food. I'll kill an hour. I'll come back and, well, probably watch TV. It's like there's a reason that there's the laundry, because just sitting there and like looking at that same stuff over and over can be tiring. But if you continue, then you bring yourself to a place where you realize what is the self, capital S, the presence of God within, that you see it and you realize it. It becomes real for you. Now I know most of you fairly well, and I know many of you have a relationship with the self, but have not yet realized what it is. It's kind of like I've got a pen pal. I'm communicating with the pen pal, but I've never sat directly across from this individual, this presence. So I can go, oh, wow. And then there's one final initiation which you would learn about after self-realization. I believe that everybody in this room has that desire to know these initiations. So we're all on the spiritual path. You may not be moving as fast as you would have liked. You may not be moving as fast as you thought you should. That doesn't matter. You're on the path, and you're going to get there, unless you step off. Sometimes people will go like, I want to get there faster. And then I say, well, here's what would speed it up. And then that's added pressure. You want to get there faster, there's going to be more pressure. So maybe just relax and find the pace that works for you. We don't want to be impatient, because if we get impatient and then we falter and we have to do things again, and then we potentially get despairing because we wasted time. So find your relaxed rhythm. Accept the 100,000 repetitions that are ahead of you. And, be excited to see what it means to be initiated into a new awareness.